I think it's starting already, yeah. I think it did already start.
Okay, well, let's start now.
Okay.
What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and I'm joined by Joe Ingram.
What's happening, man? What's up, Doug?
Stopping by for the World Series of Poker main event final table sweat.
Yeah, it was fun. It's been a fun day today. We've been watching the main event all day long.
There were some ups, some downs. Chips were won, chips were lost.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think this was, as you mentioned, kind of the first time we tried this. This was one of the most fun days I've had watching Nolan Holden tournaments in my life. So it was kind of cool to watch it with you and just hear how much you advocate never folding at any point in time. Pre-flop, flop, turn, river. Everyone plays too tight. Everyone needs to play more. So I was able to learn a lot about never folding today, and it was a fun day.
It does appear that pot odds are a thing, but when you say this was the best day of watching a poker tournament ever, how many days is that exactly?
I mean, like 10.
10? Okay.
In like 11
nice.
years, something
No,
like that.
That's
yeah.
actually more than I thought.
I don't know. Yeah, it wasn't too many.
That's not bad. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's tell you guys what's going down today. If you guys have seen the last couple of videos on the channel, I've been recapping the main at the end of the day, look at some of the stacks, talk about some hands. We're going to do that again today, but we're doing it live. So we're going to start off, look at the stacks coming into today. We have a few of the big hands, including one that I know you guys are excited to talk about. It was the biggest hand played today, biggest hand in the main by a mile.
One of the sickest hands. in
Also
main event history.
really sick.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's an incredible hand.
So we're going to look at that one. We have a final hand we're going to look at as well. So we have three hands we're going to go through. And then we're going to look at stacks, talk about the remaining players, what to kind of look forward, what to look forward tomorrow, the way things are going to go down. So a little bit of a recap here. The main should be exciting. And Joey, you ready to jump into this?
I'm ready, man. I'm ready to get into this, man. I just loved watching Hess today. It was so much fun, and
Yeah.
let's get started, man.
If only he knew about the great game of Potluck with Omaha. Is the world ready for John Hess, PLO player, PLO expert, I might add?
Why are you getting me so excited right now? I don't
All
understand,
right.
man. Come on, we're talking
All right,
Nolan Holden.
all right,
We're talking
all
Nolan
right,
Holden today,
all
Doug.
right.
No PLO, man.
All right,
No great game of PLO.
no
Don't turn me
PLO.
on like that. Come on, kid.
Okay, so we are going to be getting our chip counts from PokerNews.com.
Shout out to Poker News, man.
Shout out to Poker News. Want to make sure to give them credit for providing these updates. And really, like, if you sweat any tournament, Poker News constantly. Oh shit, we're on the wrong tab. Very good point, Joey.
Yeah.
They do a great job of updating. And you know what? Sometimes they get the hands wrong, but you know they report on God knows how many hands. Sometimes they're going to mess up. That's all right. All right. Anyway, let's talk about the stacks kind of coming into today. And, you know, we saw a real clear gap from number 2 to number 3.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you look at Hesp, he's got 86 million, and then you look at Pollock, and he has 35 million. So what are your thoughts on just kind of like what that does in a tournament setting, Joey?
Well, I think kind of coming into the day, we sort of expected that it could go pretty fast because we have a bunch of these short stackers that are super close together. And we didn't know if they'd be playing a little bit tighter, playing a bit looser, but we kind of assumed it would go fast, which actually did not happen. But I would imagine in a spot like this, you have these two big chip leaders. They're probably not going to want to battle. And Blumstein came into the day with the rec position on Hesp as well, which is just an incredible situation for Blumstein to be in.
And like when you think about like how big of an advantage that is, right? You know, you have 97 million chips, which is a lot of chips. There's only 360 million in play, so you have a huge stack. And there's one other rival player that's kind of, you know, in that neighborhood, and it's a recreational player to your direct right. I mean, that really is like the best possible setup, you know?
Right. I mean, that seems like the dream situation too. It's kind of a, you know, unfortunate for those two that they had an upswing poker patch to their right. We have
Right,
Stan
exactly,
out there.
exactly.
He was rocking the upswing poker. I saw you get
Yeah.
the coaching the other day as well too. You put that on Instagram, so
For sure.
I wouldn't want to be in position on that guy. Obviously, we know he's going to be a tough player.
Yeah, you know, and I just want to talk about Dan Ott for a moment here. You know, when he made the final table, he actually reached out to me, and just like such a nice guy. Like he said, like, you know what, like I really love what you're doing. I love the videos you put out, and I want to support you guys, and I want to wear an upswing patch. And I was like, dude, if you're gonna do that, I'm gonna coach you, and like let's do this. So I met up, hung out with him. He has an identical twin, so I hung out with them, you know, the last couple of days, kind of coaching them and walking them through some things. There were a few not Doug approved hands for sure. But I think all in all, he did a good job today, and he's a good player.
Yeah, I think he played pretty well. I mean, you mentioned that he does play a lot of cash games too, so it kind of seemed like, you know, especially when he turned that one hand into a bluff. I think it was Queen 9-9, 4-6. Flush draw got there on the river, and he turned his Ace-4 into a bluff. I think that's something a cash game player might normally do in a spot like that. Not necessarily something we see from a lot of tournament players. So yeah, man, I feel like I liked a lot of his play, except the 4-6 offsuit when he made the to make a full house on the turn there.
Yeah,
Raised, yeah.
yeah, and that's not one that we're gonna look at today. But generally speaking, when you have full houses against aggressive recreational players, you should probably trap. But let's talk about the lineup a little bit. So of course, Blumstein and Hesp coming in with a ton of chips. Then you have that there's very polarized stacks here. You know, we got the separation, we've got the rich, and then the have-nots. Benjamin Pollock leading the pack, 35 million. Brian Picholi, 34 million. Of course, he was the guy with the 8s that needed an 8 only.
What a hand, man.
That was an insane hand.
Well, it's just like the celebration that went into that the actual hand. The guy yells out 8, and then the 8 comes down on the river. I was there. Me and Big J were over there. It was
You
just
were there?
Yeah, we were there.
Oh my god,
the place erupted, man. It was great to be a part. It's the energy you feel there. It was pretty cool.
When you're down to 5% to like stay in the main in like a crucial like last 12ish people or so when it went down, that is unbelievable. Like, that is the luckiest you can get to like hit that in that scenario.
It's pretty incredible.
It really is incredible. But anyway, he still has like of the shorter stacks, one of the healthier ones going into the day. Dan out on 26. Damian Salas,
yeah, Argentina.
I've heard a bunch of pronunciations on that. And someone actually tweeted at me and they said, why are you not talking about this guy? He's gonna prove you guys wrong. Like, let's go, Argentina, let's do this.
Not sure he's proved any.
But here's the thing, we just don't know anything about this guy, and that's actually one of the things I think. When you get to the final table of the main, right? People are kind of used to final tables and like high rollers, where you get 9 players, 8. Maybe there's one guy that's like some new high roller reg or like some business guy you don't know, but like it's all of the names you're used to, right? Like when I look at the one drop table I was at, it was like me, Roble, Elke, Haralabob. God, I'm like, what are you forgetting, people? It was a while ago. It
feels like 10 years ago.
Rainer Kemp was there?
Yeah, Rainer Kemp was there. Right,
I already said Roble. But anyway, the point is when you make the final table of the main, it's way more likely you're going to have people in there that you don't know. And like there's 3 or 4 people that don't even have a World Series of Poker cash here.
Right.
It's 3 of their first mains ever, right?
Yeah.
3 of them.
Sinclair's first main. I believe Blumstein's first main event too, yeah.
And Dan Ott's first main as well.
That's crazy, man. Yeah. I think that's what ESPN kind of does a good job of is telling that story up into that point. We're going to get to see the edited episodes later on. But obviously, leading up to this point, we had the live streams, but overall, Damian Salas, we didn't really know too much about. Even Antoine Saout, I know we made the final table in 2009, but I don't necessarily know much about him.
Really, all I know about him, to be honest, is that, he made the final table before. He has had a couple deep runs, I believe. But then also, he's known for being a bit more of a tight player, I think. That's at least my understanding. And then the short stacks, not that they're that much shorter, really, but the shorter stacks coming into the day, Jack Sinclair, who lost most of his chips on the bluff we covered yesterday. If you want to see that bluff, it's the last video on the channel. But
Jack 4 versus pocket 10s, man. Yeah,
the classic cooler. They call it the classic cooler when Jack 4. What are the chances of that, Joey?
Listen, I mean, anytime you can put a lot of money in with Jack 4 on a river when there's no Jack or no 4 on there, I think you got to do it.
That's very true. That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
I asked him about that in the podcast. He said, maybe a little bit out of line, but I like my play. So
right.
Said,
and you did the podcast with a couple of these players, right?
I had Blumstein on the podcast yesterday, and I had Jack Sinclair on the podcast yesterday, too. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if you guys want to check those out, Joe Inger 1 here on YouTube. You can learn what these guys felt going into the event, what it was like being on the big pile of chips, and then also on the other side, the despair of Sinclair, who lost them to Blumstein. Yeah. Kind of interesting 2 people to get on there. But anyway, rounding out the final table, Ben Lamb coming in with 18 million. Probably the most talked about player, I would say, at this table by a good margin.
I think so. I think he's got the most name recognition too. He's got a lot of friends in poker that are on poker Twitter. He's obviously had that main event final table in the past. Plays a lot of high stakes cash. So I think he was maybe being a little over touted potentially by some people out there, but at the same time, one double up and he's kind of right back in the mix.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. I mean that's the thing. For starters, big blind's 800K going into the day. So even Ben Lamb on 23 bigs, plenty of room to move, plenty of a chance to double and then go from there, right? You double once, you're at 46 blinds. That's heaps. That's heaps. And that's one of the reasons the main's such good value, is because the structure's so slow. You get so many chances to chip back up.
2-hour levels, right?
2-hour level. Oh, have you ever played the main? Unbelievable.
Stop it.
Unbelievable.
I have not played the main event, no.
Unbelievable.
I missed the registration this year, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Let's...
We get into some no limit hold'em hands? I'm ready for some 2-card pot limit hold'em, man.
Number 1.
Let's get it, man.
This hand,
by the way, Can you
All right.
start the tournament off better than
So
this hand?
this hand was not a huge hand, but it really made a statement about John Hesp being here to play. This is the, I believe, first hand
Yeah.
of the tournament. I believe. Maybe second, but I think it was first.
I think it was like the first or second or third or something like that. Yeah.
So, action folds. The blinds are 400K, 800K. Folds to John Hesp in the cutoff. Does a standard min raise. Actually, he mixed it up pretty
Yeah,
well.
we didn't see many min raises today at all. It feels like.
We didn't because
Yeah.
min raises are not very good. But anyway, he opens up for the min raise with King 9 off in the cutoff. Folds to Antoine Saut in the small blind. I'm sure I'm butchering that pronunciation. I'm sorry if you're French for what I did to that name. I'm doing my best. Anyway, he actually has, we can't
Ace-Jack
see
off.
the hand here, but he has Ace-Jack. Ace-Jack off and decides to 3-bet. So let's actually talk about, because the open I think is pretty standard, especially on a bigger stack. Let's talk about this decision to 3-bet on like 27 blinds with Ace-Jack off because, okay, for starters, I don't mind it, right? Because like you have good removal. If he calls, you obviously have great equity. But one of the things I kind of dislike about it is that when you get jammed on, you have to fold. And it just feels like with a hand as strong as Ace-Jack facing a min raise from like a weaker player in the cutoff, I really feel like I would prefer to just take a flop.
I guess in that situation, we're never going to expect Hesp to really jam too light on us too. Even with I even like hands as strong as 10s and jacks, and I mean maybe even ace queen. He's probably just going to call. So when he does jam, it seems like a spot that we can comfortably fold, and we're probably in pretty bad shape there.
That's actually like a pretty good point. We saw plenty of times today where he just like flat. We saw a queen's flat to an open.
Right.
That was unbelievably surprising. He just took a huge beat and then flat queens to an open. I was like,
I know. That was really.
that's like not the kind of tilt I'm used to seeing. Usually people
Right.
tilt, they're like fire, like just like guns blazing, like what nines? Oh,
His way of tilting was opening the 10-8 and then flatting queens and then folding to a single bet. I believe on the flop an ace 5-2.
Interesting form of tilt. So
Yeah.
I mean, if your opponent's not going to 4-bet you very wide, then sure. But the real problem is, and this is something that I think I've experienced against a lot of high roller regs when they realize that you're playing pretty aggro with your 3-bet ranges, they can just jam. And if you fold, I mean, they get really good odds on this jam. I mean, like we're looking at like, 20, they risk like something like 21 million to win a pot that's currently 8 million.
Right.
And then when they're called, you got equity. You have equity. If you jam with 8s or you jam with ace queen or ace jack or ace 5 suit or whatever, it's not like you're like they call and you're like, oh, I'm done. No, you still have a ton of equity. And you also put these shorter stacks in a really tough ICM spot because you really don't want to call it off 9-handed when you're like kind of in the thick of it with a bunch of other short stacks with anything kind of marginal. So I mean, I guess in general, I would prefer the flat, particularly against the min raise. But 3-bet is also okay. Anyway, John Hesp decides to make a pretty bold flat. I think in general,
Yeah, Doug, is this an upswing poker approved flat with the king on offsuit here?
this is not upswing poker approved. I mean, what I will say is this 3-bet's a little on the small side. I think I'd probably prefer to see it around a little more like 5 million.
You think 400,000 is going to be that much of a big difference here in this spot, though?
Well, the thing is, this is not even a 3x re-raise. 4.8 is a 3x raise. Generally speaking, when I'm out of position, I tend to lean towards going a little bit bigger.
Right.
This is the kind of size, or maybe even a little smaller, I'd like to see in position, where you're basically like, okay, we can play post-flop if you want, but you're going to be out of position against me.
You think that Saut is very comfortable potentially going post-flop against Hesp, especially with Hesp being the amateur player, kind of making some weird plays, I guess you might be able to say?
Frankly, from what I've seen of Hesp so far this tournament, there's been a lot of aggression, a lot of high frequency betting, small amounts in different sizes in different places. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm happy to take the flop. But generally speaking, passive, weaker players are kind of more what you're looking for, I think, in some of these situations. But
I think Lucas Moran in the chat makes a good ask about player 3. So player 3 in the big blind, I think it was Pollock, had pocket 10s here. So if you have pocket 10s in this spot, are you thinking about maybe potentially going all in there? Or is it flat or what?
That's actually a really good point. So to start off with, by the way, we don't have every stack imported. We did this like while it was going on. So these are rough at best, but we just wanted to make sure we had them to talk about. In the big one of pocket 10s, I think you have, to be honest with you, a quite standard jam. I mean, I know that
you hate folding, man. I love how much you hate folding. Honestly.
I mean, like you lose every time you fold. I ran the numbers.
Yeah,
I graphed in my poker tracker whenever I folded. You're not gonna believe how bad it went.
Okay.
I didn't win a pot.
I believe you.
Yeah, no, it's
believe
crazy.
You. I don't think you're lying.
So anyway, I think in the big blind, you got 10s. Like, small blind can certainly be 3-betting a much wider range here against this like recreational looser player in the cutoff. And then there also could be, this is something that I think is worth talking about at least a little bit. There could be some degree of there being a bit of a sizing tell on the min raise. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily true. I haven't seen enough of Hesp's preflop hands. I can remember a hand where it was a 400. Oh, no, I think he threw about that hands. It doesn't make sense. But anyway, the point is, I think from some weaker players when they min raise and then also have raises to like slightly larger sizes, the min raise tends to be quite weak. So there's some chance the small blind is trying to get aggressive against that, knowing that there's a bit of a sizing tail going on. But anyway, all of these things considered, like I think tens are just way too high up in your range. You're gonna have to go with it. And he actually, I think he had like 33-ish million at the time.
35 million. Yeah, I think he was third in chips coming to this final table.
Right. So he's got 40 blinds. Even if Saut has jacks plus, which he always will 3-bet for sure, but when he does have those hands, it's not. It sucks, but you lose like 2/3 your chips, but you still have some chips left to play. And additionally, there are so many other hands you can be 3-betting the small blind that you're flipping against, or you're gonna get look if he jammed 10s here, ace jack folds, right? So you just take a flip situation, get him off it, just take his 4.6 million. And Hesp's cutoff open is just not going to have you beat very much. So, yeah, I think 10's there, pretty standard jam. People got mad at me, though, for the 10's call 2 days ago. To make the final table, the 10's call that busted basically busted Ran.
Right.
So, I know people love folding. I don't want you to upset anyone. So if you want to just fold all your good hands, you can just do that. It'll work out for you. All right.
I feel like when people analyze these final tables, they always advocate such a more aggressive style than what we see. They always say, oh, never fold. And it seems like any time, even when people are doing commentary, when they're on Twitter, I just find it interesting how that always seems to happen. But how the actual play seems to go down is it just tends to be a little bit tighter.
I'm not sure I agree. I feel like I see so many players. I see this a lot in the comments on some of the videos. I see this on Reddit. I see this on 2+2. But, I honestly think that there are a lot of people out there that are afraid to get stacked. They're afraid of bad things happening. They've happened to them a bunch. They don't want to go out like that. They don't want to risk something on a hand that, if they fold, they get to play another hand. And they live afraid. But, you gotta put on the line, man. You gotta put on the line. What are you gonna say?
I know. I already know where you're coming from with this kid. I already know where you're coming from.
The thing is, I'm here to try and win the tournament. I'm okay with if my 10s run to jack, so be it. That's life. And I just think so many people get caught up in the being still in the tournament and having a chance to pay jump ladder and all that kind of stuff where you should be playing for the win. Let's
get to this flop.
All right. So anyway, we're getting.
We got excited. We got excited pre-flop. I don't know.
Hesp is taking a flop. Okay, we know Hesp. He likes to take a flop. I'm gonna call it an action flop, if you will.
Yeah.
We have ace jack offsuit for Antoine here in the small blind. He decides to bet 3.2 million, and this is where things heat up. Hesp decides to put in the min raise, which I can't advocate, Joey. I can't advocate.
Did we know who his coach is? Did he have a certain coach that helped him out with this tournament in the spot, or was it? No, you didn't coach him either.
I don't think so.
You didn't help. Okay, so
I don't
Upswing
think
Poker
so.
was not working with him.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay,
not to my knowledge.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, of hands you can have on this flop, King 9, one of the worst ones. Now, maybe, and I don't think this is what Hesp is thinking, but I'm just putting it out there. Maybe Hesp thinks that if he has a bit better than this, he'd want to call. So this is a nice bluff. But I'm gonna say that's probably not what's going on. What do you think about this? I mean, look, so all right, pros, right? He risks 6.4 million to win
to win a bunch, yeah.
14 million?
Mm-hmm.
Those are good odds, man.
Right.
If his opponent bet folds often.
I mean, it seems unfortunate with the king in our hand. We blocked ace king, blocked king queen, some potential king jack suiteds here too. So the king doesn't seem like one of the best cards to have in this spot. We do. I mean,
9's not good either.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's just sometimes you click a button and it just happens to work out correctly for you.
Yeah.
And I think he got extremely lucky that this happened to be the spot where, that worked out.
What I will say about this hand is even though I don't really approve of the pre-flop or the flop play, if you're gonna play a tournament and you're gonna make some plays that deviate from just playing solid standard poker, always lean aggro and loose. Because if you lean aggro and loose, guess what? Sometimes you're John Hesp and you build a 100 million chip stack in the main. Okay, that happens. But if you lean tight, passive, you just don't allow yourself an opportunity to do that. A very good example of that, I think, is Vanessa Selps. Okay, absolutely Yeah. What's so funny about that?
You mean you?
Yeah. We're talking about
Okay,
me.
I didn't know we're talking about you right now.
Anyway,
Okay, I'm sorry.
a really
okay.
good example of this is Vesta Selps, okay? So she spews really hard sometimes, right? For sure. Obviously, we know that.
Play loose. He likes to
But
play,
the thing is,
he likes to put money in the pot.
sometimes she plays really aggressive in a way that, like, pushes people around, builds a stack, and like sometimes that leads to winning tournaments. I'm not saying that you should just punt off stacks loose because Doug said so. I'm just saying if you're gonna lean one way, lean loose, lean aggressive, and like at least give yourself a chance to win some chips. Okay, that's
Listen,
my.
let me
that's
get
my
some
main
shouts
point.
for Vanessa Selps in the chat, in the comments, please. Please show her a little bit of love, man. Vanessa Selps, we love you out there, man.
All right, and Hesp gets the fault. So that was a nice way to kick off the tournament.
Before we get into this next big hand, let's talk about exactly leading up to this point. The next hand we're going to show. This is the hand of the day, a hand of the tournament for right now. So all the commentary out there was very, very pro Hesp. Was hating on the young professional poker players, hating on the robots, and talking about how Hesp is so good for the game. He was talking, he was having a good time, he had on the crazy jacket. What did you kind of think about, the comments from the commentators during that, the comments on Twitter, and from your perspective, watching someone like Hesp play and have a good time and people talking to him?
Well, the thing that I liked about Hesp is that he was having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're winning in poker and you're just crushing everyone and you're laughing and having a good time, that's a lot easier than the other. And that's something that I always really try and focus on when I'm at the table. If I'm getting buried, I try and be like, look, Doug, like you're going to have days that you win, you're going to have days that you lose. And it's it's how you handle like when you're stuck a lot and like you deal with this and like still being part of that actually means something. Because like if you're winning a lot of money and like, drinking or hanging out or whatever, like you're having a good time. You're having a good time.
For sure.
If you get stacked a few times and people are just like, chatty and just like gloating and just like on all your money, then it's like, not as fun. Right?
I think I get bad at that sometimes.
You're really bad at it.
I am bad at that.
You're
You
terrible.
I
stacked him.
can't.
I stacked him
Oh,
twice
man,
in this
yeah,
one
this
game,
one,
and you
yeah.
were so tilted. You were so
You
mad.
made the
man.
worst plays of all time at PLO, dude. I can't help myself. So
Worst
I'm sorry.
plays
You
of
made
all
some of the
time.
you disrespected PLO with some of the plays.
Anyway,
that you made.
though, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, for
if you're
sure.
winning and chatting, so like he's like chatting and being part of it, right? But he's like crushing souls with min raises, showing bluffs, and just whatever. Anyway,
I thought Blumstein also did a really great job of just interacting with him.
Yeah,
and
he
I
did.
think it kind of set a good example for people out there of how do you interact with someone who's maybe a fun player or just having a good time. There is you kind of want to engage them in conversation. You want to talk to them. Hit them with some down, hit them with some slaps, whatever it is. It seems like that's what a lot of people don't do, and I understand why. But I feel like that's a pretty good way to go ahead and interact with.
quote, hit him with some slaps. Okay,
Hit him with some slaps, bro. You never hit him with the slaps?
Let's move on to
You
the
never hit
next
him with the
one.
slaps?
All right.
Man, all right. Oh,
All
my
right,
God.
so
This is crazy.
we got
This hand's crazy.
we got
Jeff.
the big hand from the day here. Scott makes a relatively conservative pre-flop open here under the gun with the pocket aces. Action folds to John Hesp, the big blind chilling on a really casual hundo mill. Makes the call. Certainly standing here from both players. Really not too much to say. Not a very good flop for John Hesp. Obviously, he checks over to Scott. Now, Scott has a kind of interesting decision here with top set. Generally speaking, I like mainly checking this hand on the flop. I think working bets is obviously fine. You have like a great hand, so that's cool. And then when you get check raised, it's nice to have the aces here. But one of the reasons that I think checking is a pretty solid play in the flop is that you just block all of the good hands so hard that allowing your opponent an opportunity to catch up or like turn a second pair, they can call it down, or maybe like take a stab. Those things are all much more valuable than trying to deny people's equity. We don't even have a flush draw on this board. And yeah, there are lots of hands in the big blind that you could call with that can make straights. I'm not really anticipating Hesp being the 6-3 off type of pre-flop guy in the big blind. And even past that, how much action you really get versus those hands compared to when your opponent doesn't have very much and can either hit a pair or take a stab or whatever. So
essentially, he seems like the kind of guy, if you do check back, he might lead out as well with a wider range of hands than most other players here, too.
Very good point. Hesp has repeatedly bet multiple streets,
Right, yeah.
generally the same size, which not.
He's having fun. He's having a good time. He's having a good time.
One disadvantage versus Hesp checking might be that the guy likes check raising. I've seen a decent
That's
amount.
very true.
I've seen a
That
decent
is
amount
true.
of
He
check
does
raising.
like check raising. We've seen that. So, but
In
I
fact-
mean, you have aces here. It's
I'm with you. This isn't PLO. We don't have to live in fear of a 4 turn. All right. So anyway, it turns to 10, and My question to you,
What
Joe,
was your reaction when
my-
you saw this? Like, by the way, we're just sitting downstairs
I
watching
was
this.
I was just rooting for a 10, honestly.
Yeah,
I wanted to see blood in the water. But like at this point, I think we just I think I just have to put it out there. Like, is poker rigged?
No.
No, answer no. But
These
I
poker
mean,
stars, no.
is this very fair? I'm also gonna say
This
no.
I mean, obviously I'm rooting for Blumstein, but at the same time, it's hard to root against Hespen. This is just a fucking brutal spot. This is incredibly unlucky. The two of the biggest chip stacks at the table with a very wide margin over third place still at this point in time. And yeah, but I mean, when we talk about the action here, and the question I have is that, was this a blow up from Hesp? Did he have to lose all of his chips here? And was there a play that he could have done differently and to not have what?
Yeah, that's really good question. So to start off with, if you have ace 10 here on the turn, I think that really all options are available to you. I think betting makes sense. I think check raising makes sense. I think check calling and check raise river makes sense. I actually think you should probably be mixing up a bit of everything. Your main line with value bets out of position should be just to bet and try and build pots. But like, I have no problem with his decision here to check raise. I think that's completely fine. You might have some other bluffs you want to throw in, like king queen or king jack. I'm not saying he would do that. I'm just saying that you should. So I have no problem with his turn check going for the raise. And then, of course, in Scott's shoes with aces, I think at some point you do have to try and build this pot, right? So I like his bet as well.
So something kind of we were talking about downstairs. So when this happens, so he bets 3, Hess makes it 7, and we were talking about being in Blumstein's spot. We've seen Hess have this tendency to, sometimes make some bluffs in this spot and have very weak hands. So do you always just like 4-betting here on the flop on the turn, or do you like potentially just calling and giving him a chance to bluff, or do you think it's just a spot where let's make a prayer to God here that he actually has something, and if we can somehow win a huge pot here, let's try to go for it?
So I think for starters, this check raise size from Hesp was way too small. I think that's kind of obvious. Everyone can see that. I think this needed to be more like 9 or 10 million. But back in Scott's shoes, it's really tough because on one hand, you have aces. So the chance that your opponent has like ace x2 pair type hands is quite low. Mm-hmm. But if your opponent has a hand like a set, you don't want to leave money on the table. If you think about here, you set up a situation where you can jam the river and try and get maximal value. So on a board like this, with so few draws going on, I think I like a call.
Yeah.
Because
I
I think Hesp has just bet later streets so frequently. We've seen him when he raises and starts betting, he just keeps firing. Like, honestly, right. I would expect to see 7 million on the river. I would expect to see that. So I would rather call and let him bet with maybe some kind of pair or something. And we've seen some hands where Hesp had like some kind of weaker showdown value, or maybe a hand that might be good. And he just kind of raised and played too aggressively. And then you make sure you extract those bets from him. And then maybe if he does have a really good hand, you still get a chance to win all of his chips or a lot of his chips. Mm-hmm. So, we haven't played with Hesp nearly as much as Blumstein has. So maybe he just, like, after days of playing with him, knew this check raise meant, like, I'm not fooling a 3-bet. So maybe, like, this, and it worked out in a big way, right? When he does decide to 3-bet. 3-bet can't be bad. It's just, call versus 3-bet what makes more sense.
So now is where potential blow up might have taken place. So now you're facing a 17 million 3-bet here from Blumstein after he checks back the flop.
Well, now I think you just simply have to call.
Mm-hmm.
I think once Blumstein 3-bets the turn, he's basically saying, I don't even think he's saying he has ace 10. Maybe he does. But he's saying he has ace 10 or better. He's saying either has ace 10, 10-10, a trapped aces, or maybe a trapped 7-7 or 5-5. But I'm not expecting those hands to check the flop back.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So he's really saying aces, 10s, or ace 10. And maybe not ace 10. Maybe that hand just calls because he still loses some sets. Although I think if you're going to 3-bet aces, 3-betting ace 10 makes some sense too, but whatever. So I don't really see any reason to re-raise. Maybe you think your opponent might have a hand like, let's just say he has a hand like 9-8, and you're worried he's going to try and outdraw you.
Yeah.
But, there's really no good reason. And, even though I think that probably what should have happened here was Hesp calls this bet, and then Scott jams the river, and then Hesp, unfortunately, really has nothing to do other than call. It does matter the way you put your chips in.
Mm-hmm.
I said it to you. Obviously, you know that. But to like people that are playing more casually, you can't just chalk it up. Be like, cooler's a cooler. Like put in the money, whatevs. Jamming here is a way worse play than calling and evaluating the river. It doesn't change the fact this is a cooler. You know, if you're the ace 10 guy here, guess what? You're gonna get your shit fucked up. There's really no way. There's really no way around. There's no way around it, Joey. There's no way around it.
I think a lot of
like
a lot of poker players, like weaker players, they don't really. They say, oh, it's a cooler. Like I just happened. But
well, it is. Yeah, and it is.
Right.
They're right, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try and analyze this to get maximal value.
I
So, John Hess rips it.
He gets
Scott-
snap called by Blumstein.
Wow, how did he know?
Instantly table his hand. He looks at the opponent's hand. He sees he has 0%, and he's like going crazy. Man,
Look at how big this pot is.
what the fuck?
Like
man?
0% equity.
151 million chips, 151 big blinds at the final table with 8 players left of the World Series Poker Main Event here. Too.
How many of all the chips is this? So there's.
I think they did. It was like 1/3. I think it was about 1/3 chips, maybe more. I can't quite remember the exact total here. Yeah, total chips 361 million. So actually, yeah, he had way more than that.
42% of all of the chips in the main were in the spot. Yeah, no, this is eight. It's eight. You're
players
right.
left.
Right.
Yeah, only Ben was eliminated at this point in time. Yeah,
unbelievable.
Yeah, it's I mean, I guess on this river, let's say hypothetically we call in Hess spot, river comes to 3, we check. Blumstein's probably not going to go all in, but he makes a pretty large bet. We just have to check call. It seems like.
Well, here's my problem. Like everyone, like that's talking about strategy in these points, or in this tournament at this point, seems to like to use sentences like "This is never a bluff. This is always a bluff. This can't be a bluff. This could be a bluff." And so they like to jump on bandwagons. Like I guarantee you, if you say like should ace 10 call there's going to be 30 Twitter warriors saying never call. It's never, and then like they're just going to get mad at you. So it's like okay, so like let's not even talk about strategy. Let's just click buttons. Let's look at them and just say things. Never bluffing, And like I just don't play poker like that. I like think about all my hands and I try and play appropriately. So the way that I would play this river, if I check raised and then got 3-bet, I would think about all my hands that would check raise and call. And then face river bet, and I think about what hands make the most sense to call. I think the first hands I would like to fold would be hands like if I did check raise them, and I might be a hand like 7-5, where I don't have any blockers to the sets that my opponent is representing. Ace 10 would just have to be a call. You block aces and 10s, and you potentially chop with ace 10. I don't think it's that likely, but it's possible. So ace 10 is just gonna be a mandatory call. The real question is, do you call with like some of the hands like ace 7? Another great question. No, actually the sets are better to call because I guess it could be ace 10. So I would fold some of my worst 2 pairs and I would call my ace 10s and probably my sets, and that would be that. If I get stacked, I get stacked. But I try and take like a balanced approach and call with the right amount of hands given the bet, and that of course assumes like a reasonable size river bet. If that's really small, you can't fold as many hands, but. I just like try to play with my range and not make assumptions about my opponents. And
I guess one thing a lot of people talked about on Twitter as well too was that kind of committing ICM suicide. Now I'm not gonna claim to be my ICM coach. Fedor Hole's retired from poker, so we haven't put in as many ICM sessions lately. Shout out to Fedor, by the way. But
bro, there's no bro. Let me just like debunk this, right?
Okay.
Fedor is not an ICM expert. He just gets first. Okay, when you get first, you don't have to be an ICM expert.
Well, sometimes you get first and second too.
Okay.
I mean,
but,
I don't know.
When you get first, you don't have to be like, oh, ICM. Like, I'm calling bullshit, bro. You get first place, you don't have to worry about ICM.
I guess that's a very solid point, too.
I mean,
but I guess there is some merit to
mid-cash expert. No.
There's some merit in Hesp's spot to maybe not check raise flop, but I think check raise flop, I think that's a bad thing. But to not going all in there is because like when you are behind there, you're kind of committing ICM suicide, like a lot of people pointed out there. So, and with the disparity in other stack sizes, you can call the 17, then check, make a decision on the river. Let's say Blumstein bets 21. Sure. I mean, that hurts you, but at the same time, you're left with 60 million.
But you can always. So I think the solution to this, by the way, is just to bluff less, right? But still bluff, because here's the thing: in these spots, let's just say you took the Scott's line where you 3-bet the turn they call and you just jam the river as a bluff, right? Mm-hmm. If you go through the logic of this is ICM suicide, so you should never bluff, then your opponent can exploit you by always folding, right? And if that's true, all of a sudden bluffing becomes real good because they're folding like all the time. So you can't never bluff there. You have to just bluff less.
So I'm talking about from a Hesper situation here, when Hesp has the ace 10 here. And
Well,
he
Hesp is
pays
never
17
going to have
million,
ICM suicide here because he's going to be alive after the end of this hand no matter what. He covers
even though
him.
he's left with 20 million chips, basically.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he's still in the thick of it. I mean, there's plenty of stacks on like 30 million chips.
Mm-hmm.
He's still in the mix. Still in the mix.
Guys, I cannot believe that this is the first time I've ever discussed ICM in my entire life. So when I was reading some of the comments on Twitter, they're saying things like that. I'm like, okay, let me ask Doug about it. Doug's played a lot of tournaments. He's the perfect guy to ask about this. So, and a lot of people out there probably have a similar sort of thought
Yeah,
or
for
question,
sure.
and they don't necessarily know about it as well too. So I think it's something to at least discuss. And
I understand that people care. You have to care about ICM to some extent, but you know, when you have a big stack, ICM doesn't value the way situations play, which are very favorable for big stacks for a lot of the reasons we're mentioning now. ICM value doesn't account for that. So if you're the big stack and you get an ICM chop, guess what? You got screwed. I'm sorry to tell you, but like you can like really try and punk other stacks, and like sometimes you know I make a on the loose side play, but I would rather die fighting than be a nit and just like
amen, buddy.
You know, what are you gonna do?
Hey, fucking amen to that.
Also, like it's just one of those things where when you start to become weak as a player because you're afraid of pay jumps and busting, if other players can see that that's happening, you become a target. You become someone that can be hunted and destroyed. You become weak. You become frail. You can no longer eat. And before you know it, you're Alan Kessler. No, I'm kidding. Shout out to Alan Kessler. I can't Alan Kessler. All right, let's move on to hand number 3. All right,
Third hand, man.
let's move on to hand number 3. Okay,
this is a great hand.
so
too,
this
Poppy.
is
a
one
great
of
hand.
one of the last hands that was played in the sesh. Dan Ott.
Dan Ott, upswing poker representative
Shout
right
out
there.
to Dan Ott.
Shout out to Dan Ott.
Opening up another go with the knight suited. Scott decides to make a move here with the queen 10, and Antonio Esfandiari was like, finally, just like excited about this.
Well, let's kind of set the stage up to this point. So the play was very, very tight. Blumstein has the overwhelming chip favorite. He's about 150 some million in chips at this point in time, and he'd been playing pretty snug. Pollock started having a little bit more chips. He got that second place. I think he had maybe 70, 75 million. He started to open up a little bit, and everyone else playing pretty tight because they all had 17 million, 20 million, 25 billion, whatever. So up until this point, we didn't really see any I mean, this might have been one of the first light 3-bets we've actually seen the entire day too. So, and from Antonio's perspective, I kind of understand where he's coming from. With
We
that.
saw Pollock 3-bet king 9 off against Dan Ott's open.
Yeah, that one hand. Yeah, we
king
need king
9.
queen. Yeah, we need king queen.
I
folded.
think that there was a light 3-bet from Scott that I just I can't recall at the moment, but I think he threw it has kind of light in hand. But yeah, in general, he's been playing on the conservative side. I would say situationally, this is an amazing spot to 3-bet. You have the third or fourth in chips player who is on the short side, opening under the gun with severe ICM pressure, and you have inf chips. You have essentially all of them. It's basically just all the chips. So yeah, it's a great spot to 3-bet. The question is, should it be as loose as queen 10? Now you get to have more bluffs because situationally this spot is good to bluff. But like, you know, what are you doing with king jack off? Probably not fighting it, right? Probably 3-betting. So king jack, king 10, maybe king queen, queen jack. You're gonna think about all of those and queen 10. I mean, you know, it's a good spot to 3-bet. I don't mind the play in general. I'm just saying it can get kind of out of hand quickly. And if players are willing to just like let you know what's up and just like stick it to you, then you can definitely get owned if you start going too wide like this.
Yeah, but up until this point, this was pretty much one of his first 3-bets here. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But I just mean like in general, if that's your 3-betting approach.
Right.
But yeah, I think this is a great spot to 3-bet, and this hand is maybe just a little bit loose, but also fine, I think.
Okay.
All right, so we have a 3-bet here from Scott. Action flows back to Dan, and you know, you're getting pretty solid odds here with 9-8 suited. You are out of position, which is not ideal, but you're getting great odds on this fight. Only 23% equity.
It seemed like in the moment you were advocating he call here, even though he is out of position. I think a lot of people out there were wondering, do you call here in this spot? You obviously hate folding, so
I just love that. Like I'm like flashing back to when this is happening, and I'm like, gotta take a flop. And I'm
I
like,
know.
I'm like,
We're sitting on the couch. He's like, can't be folding this. I'm like, you never fold, man. When do you fold?
All right, so
what do you fold ever here?
I don't really know.
What would you fold here that you open under the gun then to this spot, to this this kind of 3-bet here in this situation? Okay.
So the flop.
Okay, that's all you got. Okay.
All right, so
Fucking Christ.
the flop goes 8-4 deuce. We check over to, Dan checks over to Scott. Scott makes a small flop bet. I don't really mind this. I think betting this flop with a lot of hands is pretty good. But this flop definitely, it's an interesting flop because, Scott's going to have a bunch of overpairs that Dan's not. So from that aspect, it's better for Scott. But the thing is, Scott's going to have a lot of overcard hands, and obviously those have all bricked. Whereas Dan can have basically all of the sets here, as well as hands like 9s and 10s and jacks and everything else. So I feel like it's a relatively neutral flop.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even slightly favorable for Dan in some ways. Depends on the way Scott's 3-betting as well, of course, too. But anyway, given he has 9-8 suited, this is just a clear flop check call. And I think facing this size, you're going to call most of your pairs. I'd probably maybe fold a hand like 3s, but I'm really only folding my overcard spade hands, pocket 3s, and then maybe hands like if I just had Jack 10 of diamonds, I'd probably let that go as well.
So are you ever going to potentially check raise in Dan's spot, and with what hands are you going to do that with here?
If we were deeper, and the situation was a bit different, I would probably advocate for some check raises. I think in this exact situation, I'm going to say I would not have check raises. And the reason is because when Scott goes bet jam, you get put in a really tough spot. And I for sure want to have my sets in there, right? If I have a set here, Scott's going to barrel his over pairs anyway. And if he's bluffing, I want to give him some room. And because I have to be conservative with what I'm going to go 3 streets with, I'm probably just putting them all into check call. So I think I would not have a raise range here. If you want to have one, that's fine. You could make it 9 or 10 million, and look to jam some turns, and then maybe work on a couple bluffs, like a little 10-9 diamonds action. You could turn a jack
little tasty double backdoor
ooh,
hand.
Ooh! Don't get me excited.
Maybe.
Don't get me excited. You could do that, but I think in this exact spot, if you call, you have pop behind, right? So. I think I prefer just the call and go from there.
I love how excited you got in the moment about potentially turning a backdoor flush draw with this hand too. You're like, he can turn the backdoor flush draw here.
I did.
Easy call.
And
bam! I know.
Backdoor flush draw.
I got excited for
the backdoor flush draw. Okay, so at this point, it's getting kind of weird. Scott bets 7 million. I'm really interested to know because you don't really know what Scott's c-bet strategy here is, right? If he's just betting everything, then you can have a bunch of aces. If he's checking up some of his ace highs or most of his ace highs and betting his overpairs or some bluffs, he doesn't really have that much here. Either way, I don't really mind this hand as a triple barrel because, for starters, you're going to block ace queen, ace 10, which are hands, especially if you have the backdoor flush draw I'm looking to float the flop with. So you have some okay removal in that regard. And also when you do bet the turn, if they call, you don't block clubs, which is another thing that you want to try and avoid blocking if you're going to try and barrel 3 streets. So I think I can get behind this play from Scott all in all. Certainly on the aggressive side, but it makes sense situationally and definitely lean towards betting 3 if you are going to bet the turn. In Dan's shoes, I think there are some people that might be just jam the turn because, you're going to be committed or whatever. You have to just call. Because, if you jam, sure, you get Scott off of Queen 10. But, look, Queen 10's not going to beat you. He has 9% equity, right? He's just not going to get there. You have 91% against hands like Queen 10. If he's bluffing, you want to keep his range wide. You can improve on a ton of rivers, 9, 8 club. So, yeah, I think that Dan has a really clear call. And, never happens every now and then.
Yeah, this was...
When you're running good as the chip leader in the main.
Yeah, this is kind of a brutal river. The offsuit queen just binks on the river. And
I thought this was really interesting, by the way.
Yeah, this is really... I mean, we had some mixed sort of reactions on Twitter. I think that people heard from Scott. They said that he was value betting here, putting him on jacks, 9s, 10s. Pretty much that's what he thought he had as clear value bet for in his situation. So, and in the moment, people were saying, Antonio was saying he's trying to bluff, get him off an ace, and you said no, it's a value bet.
Well, excuse me. For starters, just talk about this jam from Scott. This is thin. It's especially thin because, he has 10s, so his opponent has 10s less often, and he's clearly trying to stack jacks through 9s. But Dan's gonna have like ace queen, ace jack, ace 10 with the backdoor flush draws on the flop. Check all flop, get this turn. He's probably gonna have ace 8 suited. He's probably gonna have ace 5 suited. He's probably gonna have ace 3 suited. He's probably gonna have ace 4 suited. He's probably gonna have ace deuce suited. He might just have ace queen. He has all of the sets. This was too thin, I think, personally. I mean, I really don't think that Dan has to call here. You know, and obviously Scott's getting a great price in this bluff, so he can't fold too many hands. But I mean, how many hands other than those hands does Dan have to call? Like maybe a couple? You know, how many?
So, but do you think there's any merit to potentially Dan folds the ace 5, the ace 3, the ace 10, the ace jack?
No.
You don't think so?
No merit to that.
Hmm.
Way too strong in your range.
Hmm.
This is a 40% pop bet on the river.
Right.
You can't fold top pair. So
I love how the way you look at all these hands. It's like you don't necessarily worry about what the situation is. Main event, 8 people left or 7 people left in this situation. You just sort of approach every hand from like none of that stuff matters. None of that shit. I just love the way that you. It's just playing PLO. It's just such a kind of a different way I've always kind of approached PLO there. So it's always fascinating to hear kind of you talk about it.
Well, to expand a little bit, again, like kind of going back to earlier when I said I think you should bluff less in that spot where it's ICM suicide. I think you should call a little bit less, but I mean like a little bit less. I don't mean like call nothing because like you just want to get 7th. I'm talking about like calling a few less hands. So if you want to maybe fold 9s or 10s here, which by the way, I think you just have. I think you have a lot of aces on this board. Honestly,
Right.
It's a small 3-bet and a small flop bet. Are you even really folding ace queen or ace jack on the flop? I mean, I don't think, dude. You're calling 4 million to win a 20 million pot on the flop.
Right.
You need like so little equity. So Antonio was actually confused in this hand while we were watching.
Yeah, he
He's
was,
like,
yeah.
I don't know if this is a value bet or a bluff. And
They
like
call it merging, I think, right? An old popular, an old
They call-
term
they-
they came up with, the merge.
they
huh?
call it the merge.
The merge.
But this was clearly value.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it was clearly value. It was just way too thin.
Right.
And maybe what he thought was that Dan's open range was a lot tighter. But then if that's the case, why would you be 3 and queen 10? So maybe he thought on the flop the 4 million gets him off a lot of ace highs, and so he doesn't have a lot of those ace x combos. But I would just say this was like way too ambitious. I mean, like honestly, Dan could even have a hand like king queen of clubs. That's not even like an impossible hand for him to have here. Flop, turn of flush draw, call turn, and call river.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think this was ambitious. You know, maybe he had some live reads and or knew some stuff about Dan that made him think this was, a hand he could go for value with. I will say this. Dan is definitely a bit of a station in some of the hands I saw earlier. We were talking. He showed me some hands, and I said, you don't need to be doing that. And he was right, like in the hands, but
Right.
like you just don't have to be doing this. So maybe he thought that Dan just isn't willing to fold those hands. Could be true. But ultimately, Dan actually did manage to.
Yeah, he did tank fold, and we were pretty.
I was like, oh my god, yeah, he did get away.
Yeah.
So that's going to do it for the hands. Let's take a look at what we got here in terms of.
Look at these stack size.
So we've got one of these things is not like the others is what's going on here. Scott Blumstein here with 178 million chips. Benjamin Pollock, he managed to like put together like a decent day. In a day where most people did not have good days.
Mm-hmm.
I think Pollock's the only person that gained chips. I think Petroli actually gained a few million, but the only other player to gain significant chips here was Benjamin Pollock, who is up to 77 million, and that's a healthy stack. I mean, Pollock is really in this.
Yeah,
he's
playing pretty well.
Yeah, and he does seem to be playing pretty well.
Yeah.
He has like 22% of the chips or so, so he's probably got like a 1 in 5 chance to win the main. Don't count him out at all. I know it seems like he's just been a little more on the quiet side. But that is a very healthy stack. Mm-hmm. Definitely has a chance to win. And I've been overall pretty impressed with it. He's played loose. He's played aggressive. He's like gone for it in some spots.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's defending the big blind at a frequency which Doug Polk approves of, which obviously, we enjoy over here.
There was a hand he defended 5 deuce off in the big.
You got clapped.
I was like,
Doug clapped. I was like, yes, baby, yes. Finally, someone's defending the big blind. I've never seen him. I mean, I've seen him excited.
And
but,
the next hand he 3-bet king nine off in the small blind, and I was like, all right, this guy's here to play. I respect that. I respect that. He was a genius. No, but I respect that, Joey. If you come to the table, I'm gonna play some hands. I'm gonna like go after some people.
Right.
I'm gonna be in the mix, and I'm gonna fight tooth and nail. I respect you. I respect you.
You're raising some psychopaths over here on the channel, aren't you, man? You're turning these guys out there into just the craziest, most aggressive players.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Nothing wrong with that. Listen, I respect that too, man. I like players that come to play. I don't got love for people that just come to fold. I mean, I don't know. Not my idea of fun. So.
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
All right. So Pacelli, 36 million, had a nice clutch aces hold to bust Jack Sinclair.
Yeah.
John Hesp, after losing most of his chips, by the way, was not as chatty. He was not.
No.
He was not.
Yeah.
He was in his shell a little bit. He was a little shell shocked, and that's fair. You go from 130 to 22 million quickly. You're going to be shell shocked, but he did manage to not just punch it off from there. So,
That's true.
you know, definitely got some respect there for John Hess kind of keeping it together. Although queens flatting and open and folding to a flop bet on an ace-high board, not how you should play queens. Not Doug approved to just call your queens and fold to a flop bet. I don't know what that was. And the guy had sevens. And you just see what the flop took it down. He probably thought he had the best hand.
The blinds going to this, by the way, guys, are 600,000, 1.2 million. So 1.2 million is the big blinds. You can kind of see a lot of these guys here. They're not very deep. Obviously, Blumstein has a massive amount of chips. He's got a massive amount of big blinds here, and he is by far in commanding chip lead.
Yeah, I mean, if Scott doesn't end up heads up, it would be a disaster. I mean, the guy's got what, like almost half the chips? Almost exactly half the chips?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, if he doesn't end up heads up, I would say this was a disaster. I mean, he's not won by any stretch. He only has half of them, so he's probably like a 1 and 2 favorite. Maybe a little bit more because he gets to push around some of the shorter stacks. But, yeah, he's got a really great shot to make it to heads up. I do think Scott has played well overall. You know, he made that big call down with 10s on day 7 against Jack to build the stack coming into today. He absolutely extracted maximum value from the ace 10. He made that move with queen 10, and even though he did get bailed out, I think that it was still a good spot to pick. I think he did a good job at the table of befriending Hesp and talking with the players. And I think he's got a pretty solid table presence overall and way he's approaching the game. So I think he's playing good, but a lot of poker left to be played here. I think that
yeah, man, it's not over. I mean, listen, a lot of these guys, they double up one time. One of these, we got 4 really short stacks here. So one of these guys doubles up. Hesp is at 44 million, at right up 32, 30, it kicked up to 40. I feel like those guys, they're still very much in it. These are 2-hour blind levels. They're still 7-handed. They can still play relatively tight, which I expect to see sort of happen tomorrow with these 3 guys that are with the really short stacks here. So I think it's still anybody's game, man. Still anybody's got a shot here to win this.
Yeah, for example, Brian Pacelli, right, who no one's even really talking about right now.
Yeah.
He has 10% of the chips. That's not a small amount of the chips. That's a lot of the chips, you know? So definitely still anyone's game. I mean, all of the guys in the teens here, the teen millions, they got a lot of work to do. They're going to have to run hot. They're going to have to get some doubles. But it can absolutely happen. The blinds are high. I mean, it could be a short day tomorrow. Honestly, I don't know what they're planning on doing. I don't know if they're planning on playing down to 3. It was supposed to play down to 6 today.
Man, they cut it off
down
early.
To 7.
Yeah.
But we got a lot of short stacks. Could be a really quick one.
So if you think about what some of these short stacks are, from what we've seen from Saut and Salas so far, do you have some confidence in them that they could potentially come back from this point and then take this down? That's why I ask. Yeah.
Well, my problem, at least with Salas, again, butchering his
Shout
name.
to Argentina.
Shout to Argentina.
Shout out to Pamsy.
I just feel like he's been so conservative. And, I mean, he folded ace-queen to that open jam where Sinclair had king-jack suited. And Pacelli had aces behind, so very nice fold in retrospect. But I'm pretty sure it was a jam. I have to look at big blinds again.
It was a jam, yeah. It was king-jack jam. He had ace-queen offsuit, thought about it for a little bit, and then made the fold. I think he was in middle position, too.
Part of it, I guess, is definitely the ICM situation. I'd have to look at the situation again more clearly, but it seems like he should maybe have thought about it a little bit more, or probably called. He did have that one raise all into the river when he had the nut flush.
Yeah, ace three.
Including checking his cards before doing it. Really weird to do that.
Little chip dance, little
like
Mexican chip
do
dance.
we got the nuts? Do we got the nuts? We got the nuts. Oh, we still have the nuts. All
Yeah,
right.
exactly,
Whew,
yeah.
I didn't want to like. What do you imagine jamming and then you didn't have the nuts? Maybe embarrassing. What's that called? What do they call that? Bluff?
They call it a bluff. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't see too much. He played on the. I mean, to be fair, I didn't see too much that was bad either. Except that
Right.
sevens open on 16 blinds. By the way, guys, in the hijack, just jam sevens. Don't open it. You open the door for people to 3-bet you, or for people to call, which happened, and there was an ace high board. Just jamming that depth is really what you want to be doing. So I'm not even sure how good a short stack game is necessarily.
I think some people said he did play a lot of online poker too. So
Okay, maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong.
We'll see.
Saud, I have a little more faith in. I feel like he at least tried to make a couple moves. The ace jack out of the gate didn't go so hot. He is a little bit more conservative as well, which I don't think really helps him. But he's more experienced for sure. You know,
Right.
the guy has made a final table before. That speaks volumes. And he also has another deep run too. So I'd say Saud a little more than Salas. And then I definitely think that Dan Ott, is going to play pretty solid, but he's 16 million chips. It's not
much
really.
you can do. Yeah.
It's not really. It's in God's hands now, guys. It's in God's hands. So
It's in God's hands, guys. That sums it up for me. It's in God's hands. Okay. It's in God's hands.
All
so
right.
Pick your three. Who do you got three going tomorrow?
Who are my three?
Who are your three?
Well, I hate to go with the favorite, but you gotta go with Scott. I mean, he's got half the chips.
Okay.
And I'm gonna go with Pollock too. I feel like he's been playing really well, and he has a lot of chips as well.
Okay.
Can I take my boy Dan Ott here?
Take that out. I got
Dan Ott. I'll take Dan Ott here.
I got to go with the favorite. I'm going with John Hesp as the third that joins this party. So I'm going Scott Bloomstein. I got to go with Pollock, man. Pollock. I don't know how they say his last name. I think it's Pollock. It sounds like Pollock to me. We'll go with Pollock, and then we're going to go with John Hesp. Those are my three guys right there to make the final three tomorrow.
Awesome. Yeah, seems good. Also, Pollock has a good seat. He's to the direct left of Scott. No, I'm sorry.
Direct.
Sorry, there's one person in between.
Yeah,
Saud and then
Right.
Pollock, which is great. When you're in this spot, you want to be closer to the chip leaders left, have more chance to play against them, have a chance to capitalize on that position. So yeah, I actually think that Pollock has a quite good shot to win the main.
Yeah.
I would say that I like his chances, but a lot of work left to be done. So we'll do another one of these tomorrow, or at least I will. You're of course always welcome to join.
I don't know, man. I gotta watch at home. I don't know, man. It seems more fun than just kind of discuss it. I think we had a fun day today, man. Tweeting out a lot of stuff on there, did some Instagram stuff.
Yeah, by the way,
it was really fun today.
If you guys want, while the event's going on, we're both tweeting, especially me. I'm pounding Twitter.
Yeah, Doug has been putting some.
I'm going to be tweeting all kinds of stuff about the event, like either strategy or jokes or whatever. So if you want to check it out while the event's going on, Doug Poker over on Twitter.
Wait a second. Did you mention the giveaway? The main event giveaway? Did you tell him about it?
I don't believe we have a giveaway anymore.
Oh.
We had a good run.
Damn, man, you gave away all the money already. 25,000. How much did they get? 25,000.
We're in the process of giving it away. We got one $25,000 winner and then a bunch of $500 winners. But
okay, so no giveaway tomorrow and the next days.
No giveaway.
Okay.
I appreciate it though. I appreciate it. Thank you for mentioning it.
Sure, you're welcome.
Okay, that's going to do it for us here today, guys. If you want to see recaps of the past days, they're on the channel. We'll have a new one, a new recap of day 2 of the main up tomorrow. Make sure to check that out. And if you do want to learn more about playing poker or tournament poker, I'd recommend checking out upswingpoker.com.
Great site.
The Tournament Masterclass by Pratush Badiga is an excellent way to learn about tournaments, get better, improve your game, as well as, of course, the Upswing Lab. If you're a newer player or small stakes player, it is the best place to learn and improve your game. So one day maybe you can play with the big guys. You're gonna have to run pretty goddamn hot though.
Yeah. No amount of Upswing Lab's gonna prepare you to be able to make the final table of 7,200 people, but it's gonna give you a good chance to put yourself in a good position to prepare, and yeah, that's what you need to do. So.
All right, that's going to do it for us here today. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks,
check
everybody.
out Joey over at Joe One here on YouTube.
Just check out more Doug, man. Listen, Doug's got all the Nolan Hold'em expertise you could ever have, man. Check out Doug. Stay on Doug's channel.
All right. Thanks. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Adios, guys.